you make of how Apple is, some say, spinning this outcome?
So Apple's focusing on the good, right? And if you are a PR person for Apple, if you're Apple, you're not going to come out and say that this is bad when there's some good that you could, promote instead. So the judge not ruling that Apple is a monopoly, obviously a good thing. The judge criticized the 30% cut, but didn't require Apple to change it. A good thing. She's not forcing the allowance of third-party app stores or sideloading. That's a great thing. The bad news, this is the biggest change ever coming to the App Store. She's going to force all app developers to be able to promote outside purchasing mechanisms. So you can go to the web to complete your purchases, whether that's V-Bucks in Fortnite, whether that's a book in the Amazon app. Of course, Apple already implemented this or said they would implement this for Spotify, Netflix, and other apps. Now this is going to expand to games, which is, of course, a lot more lucrative.
Meantime, Epic says they're going to appeal the decision. And Jason, the way you put it, they lost on every count. They're going to have to pay millions. But isn't this potential dent in the App Store, a victory for Epic?
It is a victory for Epic, but you know what is not a victory for Epic? The fact that Fortnite, their game, is still not in the App Store, and the ruling from the judge does not require Apple to reinstate it. So that is a huge blow for them, in addition to them losing pretty much every count that they had. Tim Sweeney, Epic CEO, said on Twitter today that this was not a win for customers and developers. It seems like the Epic camp is pretty unhappy about the ruling, despite that win. The only winner here really is the third-party developers who might benefit from these App Store changes. Epic is not happy today.
Right, Epic saying, and Tim Sweeney himself saying, the ruling isn't a win for developers and consumers, that Fortnite will return to the App Store when and where Epic can offer in-app payment in fair competition with Apple. In-app payment passing along the savings to consumers. Now, Mark, Apple's general counsel said they're going to look at the ruling closely and decide later whether to make any actual changes. Will those changes actually come to pass?
There's nothing to look at. It's pretty crystal clear, at least to me, what's going to happen here. Apple announced last week that they're going to allow reader apps, which is books, which is music, media, video, basically your Netflix, Spotify's, and Kindle readers of the world, to have buttons in their apps to complete purchases. So if you want to sign up for Netflix, you click a button, takes you to Netflix website, you log in, you give your credit card info, you go back to the Netflix app on the iPhone or iPad, and you keep it moving. That's exactly what Apple is being asked to implement, but for games and other app categories as well. It's pretty simple. I think this is going to be very easy to implement. According to my back of the envelope math, this is probably going to cost Apple between $1 and $5 billion per year, which you compare that to their $350 billion per plus income they're expected to make in fiscal 21, not a big deal. Still very significant. I think Apple is going to implement this. There's a 90-day stay on the injunction. So we'll probably see this early next year going into effect at the same time as the previous reader ruling from last week.
So it's not just game makers, but basically any kind of app. I mean, Jason, what does this mean? Should these changes come to pass for game makers and essentially everybody else?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I haven't seen a ton of people talking about this, but from a practical perspective, I'm not sure that many consumers want to go to an external store to make their purchases and have to enter their credit card again when they could just do it through Apple. And how many people are really going to see that as a barrier and not actually make the in-app purchases? I think that's going to be some calculus that some of the developers take into account when they're deciding, hey, do we want to really use a third-party payment processor, or do we want to just stick with Apple? Is that extra 20% or whatever it turns out to be, is that really worth it? Or are we going to lose a lot of customers along the way? The real winners here, I think, are going to be the big gaming companies, the EAs and the Activisions of the world, who have these massive mobile games like Candy Crush, like Star Wars, that are making many, many millions of dollars, over $1 billion a year in Candy Crush's case. And when they do switch to their own internal devices, or when they switch to third-party payment processors, they will see a lot of money as a result. But for the smaller developers, I think it's really going to be a case-by-case basis if they think it's actually even worth it to do this.